Tonight, we're going to spend some time with the most extraordinary object in the known universe. It weighs about 3 pounds. It sits quietly inside your skull. And right now, as you settle in, as your body finds stillness, it is doing something it does every night. It is preparing to let you sleep. We're going to move through 100 facts about the human brain, starting with the simplest things: its size, its shape, its basic architecture, moving through the senses, through memory, through emotion, and arriving, eventually, at sleep itself, at what your brain does in the dark while the rest of you drifts away. You don't need to remember any of this. You don't need to follow closely. These facts are small, quiet things, interesting enough to fill the space between wakefulness and sleep, soft enough to let you go. Make yourself comfortable, let your body settle, let your eyes close whenever they want to. Let's begin. Fact number 1. The average adult human brain weighs about 3 pounds, roughly the same as a small cantaloupe. For something that contains everything you've ever thought, felt, or remembered, everything you are, 3 pounds is a remarkably modest container. It fits in your 2-cupped hands. It is soft, almost gel-like to the touch. And yet inside it, right now, something like 86 billion neurons are quietly at work. Fact number 2. Your brain contains approximately 86 billion neurons, and roughly the same number of non-neuronal cells called glial cells. For a long time, scientists believed glial cells were simply scaffolding, structural support for the neurons that do the real work. We now know that's far from true. Glial cells regulate chemical environments, support the immune system of the brain, and play active roles in how neurons communicate. The brain is a partnership, not a hierarchy. Fact number 3. Each neuron can form connections with up to 10,000 other neurons. These connections, called synapses, are where the real complexity lives, not in the cells themselves, but in the spaces between them. The number of possible synaptic connections in a single human brain exceeds the number of stars in the Milky Way. Some estimates put it at a quadrillion, a 1 followed by 15 zeros. Fact number 4. The brain is divided into 2 hemispheres, left and right, connected by a thick bundle of nerve fibers called the corpus callosum. The idea that one hemisphere is purely logical and the other purely creative is a simplification, a popular one, but not quite accurate. Both hemispheres are involved in most complex tasks. What's true is that certain functions are lateralized. Language, for most people, leans left. Spatial awareness leans right. But the 2 sides are in constant conversation, sharing information across the corpus callosum many times per second. Fact number 5. The outermost layer of the brain, the cerebral cortex, is only about 2 to 4 millimeters thick. That's roughly the thickness of 2 or 3 stacked credit cards, and yet this thin sheet of tissue, folded and refolded into its characteristic ridges and valleys, is where much of what makes us human resides. Language, abstract thought, planning, moral reasoning, perception, all of it happens in a layer barely thicker than your thumbnail. Fact number 6. If you unfolded the cerebral cortex and laid it flat, it would cover an area of about 2.5 square feet. The deep folds, called gyri and sulci, allow that much surface area to fit inside a skull the size of a bowling ball. Evolution found a way to pack in more processing power without requiring a larger head. The folding is the solution, and the pattern of those folds is unique to every individual, like a fingerprint you'll never see. Fact number 7. The brain is about 75% water, which means it is exquisitely sensitive to hydration. Even mild dehydration, losing just 1 or 2% of your body's water, measurably impairs cognitive function. Attention, working memory, and mood are among the first to suffer. Drinking a glass of water before a difficult task is not just habit. It is, in a small but real way, maintenance. Fact number 8. The brain has no pain receptors. The brain can perceive pain, it processes pain signals arriving from the rest of the body, but it cannot feel pain itself. Surgeons can, and sometimes do, perform brain surgery on patients who are awake. The patient feels nothing in the brain tissue. The skull and surrounding membranes, yes, but not the brain. This is part of what makes the brain so philosophically strange. It experiences everything, and it itself cannot be felt. Fact number 9. The cerebellum, at the back of the brain, contains more than half of all the brain's neurons. The cerebellum is compact, dense, and ancient in evolutionary terms. Its primary role is coordination, movement, balance, timing, the fine adjustments that happen below conscious awareness when you reach for a glass of water or walk across a dark room without stumbling. It is the brain's editor for motion. Quiet, invisible, essential. Fact number 10. The human brain tripled in size over the past 2 million years of evolution. The expansion was rapid by evolutionary standards, driven partly by diet, partly by social complexity, partly by the demands of language. Our brains are roughly 3 times larger relative to body size than you'd predict for a mammal of our weight. Whatever caused that growth, and scientists are still working out the details, it produced something that can ask why it grew in the first place. Fact number 11. The brain is protected by 3 layers of membrane called the meninges and bathed in cerebrospinal fluid. Cerebrospinal fluid acts as a cushion, surrounding and buoying the brain so that its weight doesn't compress the delicate tissue at its base. Without it, the brain would effectively be resting on the inside of the skull with all of its own weight. With it, the brain floats, suspended, protected. The body's engineering is quietly remarkable. Fact number 12. The blood-brain barrier is one of the most selective filters in the body. It separates the brain from the general circulation, carefully controlling what molecules can pass through. Most substances in the blood cannot enter the brain at all. Glucose, the brain's primary fuel, gets through, oxygen gets through, certain fats get through, many drugs don't, which is why treating brain conditions can be so difficult. The brain guards itself carefully, even from the body it belongs to. Fact number 13. White matter makes up about half of the brain's volume. We tend to focus on gray matter, the neuron bodies where processing happens, but white matter is the brain's communication infrastructure. It consists of long nerve fibers coated in myelin, a fatty white sheath that dramatically accelerates the speed of electrical signals. Without myelin, signals would travel at about 1 mile per hour. With it, they travel at up to 200. White matter is the reason thoughts happen in moments rather than days. Fact number 14. The brain develops from back to front, and the prefrontal cortex, the seat of judgment and impulse control, is the last region to fully mature. Full maturation typically isn't complete until the mid-20s. This isn't a character defect in younger people. It's architecture. The region responsible for weighing long-term consequences, regulating emotion, and resisting impulsive action is, for a substantial portion of life, still under construction. Knowing this changes how we understand adolescence and perhaps how we extend patience to our earlier selves. Fact number 15. The brain generates enough electrical power to light a small LED bulb. At any given moment, the brain produces approximately 20 watts of electrical power, the same output as a dim lamp. This electricity is produced by the collective firing of billions of neurons. It can be measured on the surface of the skull with electrodes, a technology called EEG, and the patterns of that electrical activity shift with every state: wakefulness, drowsiness, deep sleep, dreaming. Fact number 16. The brain contains its own immune system, separate from the body's. Specialized cells called microglia patrol the brain continuously, surveying the environment, removing damaged cells and debris, responding to injury or infection. They make up about 10% of all brain cells. For many years, the brain was considered immune-privileged, isolated from immune responses. We now understand it has its own distinct system. Quiet, constant, maintaining order in a space too delicate for the body's usual defenses. Fact number 17. The spinal cord is an extension of the brain, not a separate structure. Together, the brain and spinal cord make up the central nervous system. The spinal cord is essentially the brain's long stalk, carrying signals down from the brain to the body and up from the body to the brain. Some reflexes never reach the brain at all. They're processed entirely within the spinal cord, allowing the body to react before the signal even has time to travel upward. The body is faster than thought. Fact number 18. The human brain shares its basic structure with the brains of other mammals, and some structures with creatures far more ancient. The brainstem, which regulates breathing, heart rate, and basic arousal, is sometimes called the reptilian brain because its equivalent exists in reptiles and has existed for hundreds of millions of years. Layered on top of that, across evolutionary time, came the limbic system, emotion, memory, and then the cortex. We carry geological history inside our skulls, old structures beneath new ones, all running simultaneously. Fact number 19. Neurons are among the longest-lived cells in the body. Most of your neurons are with you for life. Unlike skin cells, which replace themselves every few weeks, or blood cells, which live for months, many neurons in the cortex have been with you since before you were born. They've changed, grown new connections, lost old ones, but the cells themselves, the ones firing right now, may be as old as you are. Fact number 20. The brain never fully stops changing, a property called neuroplasticity. For most of the 20th century, scientists believed the adult brain was essentially fixed. What you had was what you had. We now know this is wrong. The brain rewires itself continuously in response to experience, to learning, to injury, to simply paying attention to different things. Every skill you practice, every habit you form, every relationship you invest in changes the physical structure of your brain. You are never quite the same person twice. Fact number 21. The brain makes up about 2% of your body weight, but consumes roughly 20% of your body's energy. It is the most metabolically expensive organ you have. Even at rest, even while you sleep, the brain demands a disproportionate share of the body's resources. Glucose, oxygen, blood flow, all are directed toward it in quantities that don't match its size. Whatever the brain is doing, it is never cheap. Fact number 22. The brain uses glucose as its primary fuel and cannot store it. Unlike muscles, which can store energy as glycogen for later use, the brain needs a continuous, steady supply of glucose delivered through the blood. If that supply is interrupted for even a few minutes, consciousness fails. The brain's inability to store its own fuel is part of why blood sugar and its regulation matters so profoundly for how you think and feel. Fact number 23. The brain consumes roughly the same amount of energy whether you're solving a difficult problem or sitting quietly. This surprises most people. The expectation is that hard thinking burns dramatically more energy, that the exhaustion after a long mental effort reflects significant caloric expenditure. In reality, the difference in glucose consumption between intense concentration and quiet rest is only about 1%. Mental fatigue is real, but it is neurochemical more than metabolic. The brain's baseline hunger is nearly always the same. Fact number 24. The brain requires a continuous supply of oxygen and begins to lose function within seconds of being deprived of it. After about 15 seconds, without oxygen, consciousness dims. After a few minutes, permanent damage can begin. The brain is exquisitely dependent on the circulatory system, not as a passive recipient, but as an active regulator. Blood vessels in the brain dilate and constrict in response to local neural activity, directing more blood to wherever it's needed most, moment to moment. Fact number 25. The brain can run on ketones as well as glucose, a fact exploited by certain diets and by the body during periods of low food intake. Ketones are produced by the liver when carbohydrates are scarce. The brain can use them as an alternative fuel, not as efficiently, but sufficiently. Some researchers believe ketone metabolism may have cognitive effects. The brain's adaptability to different fuel sources is part of what allowed our ancestors to survive periods of scarcity that would otherwise have shut the most energy-hungry organ down. Fact number 26. Your brain temperature runs slightly warmer than the rest of your body. Core body temperature is typically around 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Brain temperature is often a degree or two higher because of the metabolic heat generated by all that continuous electrical activity. The brain is, in a literal sense, warm with thought, and its temperature fluctuates with neural activity, rising slightly during focused effort and dropping during sleep. Fact number 27. The brain receives about 15 to 20% of the heart's total blood output. The heart pumps roughly 5 liters of blood per minute. Of that, about 750 milliliters each minute go to the brain, an organ that weighs only 3 pounds. This is not generosity, it is necessity, and the body protects this supply fiercely. When blood pressure drops elsewhere, mechanisms work to maintain cerebral blood flow at the cost of other regions. Fact number 28. Thinking about food activates many of the same brain regions as actually eating it. The brain does not always distinguish cleanly between anticipation and experience. The reward systems that light up when you eat something pleasurable also activate when you vividly imagine eating it. This is part of why craving is so compelling. The brain, in some sense, is already there, already tasting what isn't yet in your mouth. Fact number 29. During sleep, the brain's energy consumption drops, but only slightly. Sleep might look like rest, but the brain remains significantly active. Certain areas reduce their activity during slow-wave sleep. Others, especially those involved in memory consolidation and emotional processing, remain busy. The sleeping brain is not off. It has simply changed its agenda. Fact number 30. The brain can adapt its energy use in response to chronic scarcity, a process that has both protective and potentially costly effects. In prolonged periods of insufficient nutrition, the brain protects itself by suppressing energy use in areas considered non-essential, certain aspects of mood regulation, complex decision-making, forward planning. It is triage. The brain keeps the lights on in the rooms that matter most and quietly closes the doors to others. This is part of why chronic stress, inadequate sleep, and poor nutrition affect thinking in ways that feel like character rather than chemistry. Fact number 31. The brain is about 60% fat by dry weight. More than any other organ, the brain is built from fatty acids. Myelin, the insulation around nerve fibers, is largely fat. The membranes of neurons are fat. The structural integrity of the brain depends on fats in ways that are still being mapped. This is one reason why adequate dietary fat, particularly certain long-chain fatty acids, matters for cognitive function across the lifespan. Fact number 32. The brain synthesizes its own supply of molecules that resemble the active compounds in cannabis, called endocannabinoids. These molecules, anandamide is one of them, are produced on demand by neurons and act as a kind of internal modulation system, quieting overactive signals and helping regulate pain, mood, appetite, and memory. The fact that cannabis affects the brain so profoundly is largely because it hijacks a system the brain already built for itself. Fact number 33. The prefrontal cortex consumes disproportionately high energy relative to its size. The prefrontal cortex, involved in planning, decision-making, and impulse regulation, is particularly costly to run. This may help explain why these functions are among the first to deteriorate when the brain is fatigued or stressed. The expensive systems go first. The deeper, older systems, emotion, habit, reflex, run cheaper, and they outlast the rest. Fact number 34. Caffeine works not by energizing the brain, but by blocking a molecule that signals fatigue. Adenosine is a byproduct of neural activity. It accumulates as you stay awake, and its increasing presence is what produces the feeling of sleepiness. Caffeine occupies adenosine's receptors without activating them. The brain doesn't know it's tired because the message isn't getting through. The adenosine is still there, still accumulating. When the caffeine clears, the tiredness arrives all at once. Fact number 35. The brain rewards learning with a small release of dopamine. When you understand something new, when a piece of information fits into place, when a problem resolves, there is a subtle chemical pleasure accompanying it. Dopamine is sometimes called the reward neurotransmitter, but a more precise description is that it signals prediction and resolution. The brain is a pattern-finding machine, and when it finds one, when something clicks, there is a quiet satisfaction built directly into the biology. Fact number 36. You do not see with your eyes, you see with your brain. The eyes collect light and convert it to electrical signals. Everything else, color, depth, motion, meaning, the face of someone you love, is constructed by the visual cortex and surrounding areas. What you experience as seeing is the brain's best interpretation of incoming data. It is always a model, always a reconstruction. The world as you see it has never existed outside your skull. Fact number 37. There is a blind spot in each of your eyes, and you never see it. Where the optic nerve connects to the retina, there are no photoreceptors. No light is registered there at all. There is a gap in your visual field at this exact location, and yet your perception is seamless because the brain fills it in. It takes information from the surrounding area and completes the picture quietly and automatically, so you never notice the whole. Fact number 38. The brain processes visual information from about 2/3 of its total surface area. Vision is the dominant sense for humans by a significant margin. More cortical real estate is devoted to processing what we see than to any other sense. This is relatively recent in evolutionary terms, and it means that what we look at and what we choose to put in front of our eyes shapes more of our neural activity than almost anything else. Fact number 39. Smell is the only sense with a direct pathway to the brain's memory and emotion centers. All other senses, vision, hearing, touch, taste, route through the thalamus before reaching higher brain areas. Smell bypasses this relay and connects almost directly to the amygdala and hippocampus, the structures most involved in emotion and memory formation. This is why a scent can return you to a moment 20 years ago more vividly than a photograph. The pathway is shorter, the connection more direct. Fact number 40. The brain can distinguish between roughly 1 trillion different scents. For a long time, the commonly cited number was 10,000. A 2014 study revised that estimate dramatically upward to at least 1 trillion combinations of odor molecules that humans can tell apart. The olfactory system is vastly more sophisticated than we realized. It is ancient, and it has been refined over an enormous span of evolutionary time. Fact number 41. Your brain is continuously predicting what will happen next, and perception is largely the comparison between prediction and reality. This is sometimes called predictive processing. Rather than passively receiving sensory information, the brain actively generates a model of the world and compares incoming signals to that model. What you consciously perceive is less the raw input and more the error signals, the places where reality differs from expectation. You live, in a sense, slightly in the past, and mostly in your own predictions. Fact number 42. Time perception is constructed by the brain and is highly variable. There is no single brain clock. Time is assembled from multiple systems: attention, memory, emotional state, body rhythms. When you're engaged, time passes quickly. When you're bored or afraid, it stretches. The brain of a person under extreme stress may process information faster, making events appear to slow. What we call time is less a feature of the universe than a product of our particular neural architecture. Fact number 43. The brain can experience a phenomenon called synesthesia, where one sense automatically triggers another. For some people, sounds have colors, numbers have personalities, words have tastes. This is not imagination. Synesthetes consistently describe the same cross-sensory experiences, and brain imaging confirms activity in multiple sensory regions simultaneously. It's estimated that perhaps 4% of people have some form of synesthesia, often without knowing it's unusual, because they've never experienced anything else. Fact number 44. The brain processes pain not as a direct signal from tissue, but as a decision about threat. Pain is not simply a message that says, "Damage is happening here." It is the brain's conclusion that something threatening enough is occurring to warrant your attention and action. This is why pain can be influenced by context, expectation, and meaning. Pain in a situation that feels safe is processed differently than identical stimulation in a situation that feels dangerous. The brain decides how much pain is appropriate, and it is not always right. Fact number 45. Touch is the first sense to develop in the womb, and it reaches the brain faster than vision. Tactile information travels along fast-conducting nerve fibers and reaches the somatosensory cortex with remarkable speed. Vision, by contrast, requires more processing steps. In moments of crisis, when you flinch away from something approaching, the touch system is often already responding before the visual system has finished constructing what it saw. The oldest sense is also, in some ways, still the fastest. Fact number 46. The brain does not hear sound. It hears the meaning it assigns to patterns of air pressure. Your ears detect vibrations in the air and convert them to electrical signals. Those signals are then analyzed for frequency, rhythm, pattern, and context. Whether a sound is music or noise, whether a voice sounds warm or cold, whether a tone is threatening or comforting, all of this is interpretation, assigned by the brain. Every sound you've ever heard has been, in a fundamental sense, something your brain made. Fact number 47. The brain can hear words in random noise, a phenomenon called pareidolia of sound, or audio pareidolia. Just as we see faces in clouds, we hear language in white noise or ambiguous sounds. The brain is so primed to find speech, so practiced at pattern matching for human voices, that it finds them even where they don't exist. This is not a malfunction. It is the same system that, in clearer conditions, allows us to understand whispers across a crowded room. Fact number 48. The brain's map of the body, called the homunculus, is dramatically distorted. If you drew a figure of a person where each body part was sized proportionally to the amount of brain tissue devoted to it, you'd get something strange. Enormous hands, a huge mouth and lips, tiny legs. Vast amounts of cortex are devoted to the hands and face,
regions with the finest motor control and the most sensitive touch. The brain's body is nothing like the body's body. Fact number 49. The brain can adapt to dramatic changes in sensory input, a property called cross-modal plasticity. In people who are blind from birth, the visual cortex does not sit idle. It is recruited for other purposes, often for processing touch or sound, particularly language. Braille readers who are blind show activity in the visual cortex while reading with their fingertips. The brain repurposes available real estate. It does not waste space. Fact number 50. The experience of beauty, visual, musical, or otherwise, activates the brain's reward circuitry. When you encounter something beautiful, a piece of music that moves you, a landscape that takes your breath, a line of writing that feels exactly right, reward pathways activate. Dopamine is involved. There is genuine pleasure, chemically, in encountering beauty. It is not a luxury of the human mind. It appears to be a feature of it. Fact number 51. Memory is not stored in one place in the brain. It is distributed across many regions. There is no single memory bank. Different aspects of a memory, the sights, sounds, smells, emotions, context, are stored in the regions that originally processed them. What we call retrieving a memory is the brain reconstructing it, pulling those distributed fragments back together. Each retrieval is a new act of assembly, and each assembly can subtly change what's there. Fact number 52. The hippocampus is essential for forming new long-term memories, but it is not where memories ultimately live. The hippocampus acts as a kind of initial recording site and index. New experiences are logged there first. Over time, particularly during sleep, memories are gradually consolidated into the cortex, becoming more stable and less dependent on the hippocampus. The hippocampus is the entry point, the cortex is the archive, and sleep is the transfer process. Fact number 53. Working memory, the ability to hold information in mind while using it, can typically manage only about 4 items at once. The classic figure is 7 plus or minus 2. More recent research suggests 4 is closer to the real limit for distinct items without chunking. Working memory is the mental scratch pad, where you hold a phone number while dialing, track the thread of a conversation, or keep track of where you are in a sentence. It is small, and it is exhaustible. Fact number 54. The brain forgets on purpose. Forgetting is not simply failure. It is a feature, a process of filtering. The brain receives far more information than it can store, and it continuously selects what to retain based on relevance, emotional weight, and repetition. What gets forgotten was, in a sense, decided to be unimportant, and a mind that forgot nothing, that retained every detail of every moment, would, research suggests, be deeply impaired in its ability to think and function. Fact number 55. Emotional memories are more durable than neutral ones because of the amygdala's involvement in memory consolidation. When something emotionally significant happens, the amygdala signals to the hippocampus, "This matters, record it carefully." Stress hormones enhance the encoding of emotional memories. This is adaptive. The brain prioritizes what has stakes, but it also means that frightening or painful experiences can be encoded with particular vividness in ways that persist longer than we'd sometimes wish. Fact number 56. The tip of the tongue phenomenon has a neurological basis. When a word is on the tip of your tongue, when you know it, but can't quite reach it, what's happening is a partial retrieval. The concept is accessible. The sound, the feeling of the word, perhaps even its first letter. But the full phonological form isn't completing. It's a retrieval pathway that has started but not finished. And the harder you grasp for it, often the harder it becomes to find. Fact number 57. Repetition strengthens memory, but spacing that repetition over time works far better than massing it. Returning to something after a day, then a week, then a month, produces more durable learning than reviewing it 3 times in a single afternoon. The brain seems to consolidate memories more thoroughly when they must be retrieved after a delay, when some forgetting has begun and the retrieval requires effort. The slight struggle of remembering is itself part of what makes something stick. Fact number 58. Context is encoded as part of memory, which is why being in the same place can trigger memories formed there. Memory is not just information, it's information plus environment. The room you were in, the sounds around you, even your physical posture can become part of the memory trace. And when you return to that environment, those contextual cues can trigger what was formed there. A childhood bedroom, a college campus, a song playing in a car years ago. Context is the key, and it is everywhere. Fact number 59. The brain is more likely to remember the beginning and end of a list or experience than the middle. This is called the serial position effect, specifically the primacy and recency effects. Items at the beginning get extra encoding time, items at the end are still in working memory. The middle gets neither advantage. This affects everything from how we remember conversations to how we experience a vacation. The first day and the last day tend to anchor the memory more than everything in between. Fact number 60. Sleep is essential for memory consolidation. Without it, newly formed memories are fragile. During sleep, particularly slow-wave sleep, the brain replays the experiences of the day, strengthening the neural connections that encode them. Information learned before sleep is better retained than information learned with waking hours following it. This is not coincidence. Sleep is when the library is organized, when the day's raw material is transformed into something more permanent. Fact number 61. False memories can be created, and they feel identical to real ones. Research has demonstrated that suggestion, imagination, and leading questions can introduce memories of events that never occurred. These memories are not felt as different from genuine ones. They carry the same quality of conviction, the same sense of personal experience. Memory is reconstructive, and the reconstruction can be influenced in ways the conscious mind is entirely unaware of. Fact number 62. Learning a new skill changes the physical structure of the brain. The brain of a musician has measurably more gray matter in motor and auditory regions than a non-musician's. The hippocampus of a London cab driver, whose job requires holding detailed maps of an enormously complex city, is measurably larger in the navigation-related region. The brain you use grows. The brain you don't use gradually prunes back. What you practice literally reshapes you. Fact number 63. The brain strengthens the connections used most frequently and prunes the ones used least. This process, called synaptic pruning, is especially active during adolescence, when the brain undergoes a significant reorganization. Connections that have been used regularly are preserved and strengthened. Those that have rarely fired are cleared away. It is an efficiency mechanism, and it means that the habits, skills, and patterns of thought you cultivate in early life help determine which neural architecture you carry into the rest of it. Fact number 64. Recalling a memory makes it temporarily vulnerable to change. Each time you retrieve a memory, the neural connections holding it become briefly unstable, a window during which the memory can be modified by new information or emotion. This process is called reconsolidation. It is one reason why the same memory, recalled many times over years, can slowly shift. And it is also one reason why certain therapeutic approaches work, not by burying a memory, but by retrieving it in a different context and allowing its emotional charge to be updated. Fact number 65. The brain has a dedicated region, the default mode network, that activates specifically during memory, imagination, and self-reflection. When you're not focused on a task, when your mind wanders, a consistent set of brain regions activates together. These regions overlap substantially with those involved in remembering the past and imagining the future. The resting mind is not idle. It is doing something that may be among the most distinctly human things the brain does, traveling in time through memory and imagination, weaving a continuous story of who it is. Fact number 66. The amygdala processes emotional significance, but it is not the seat of emotion itself. The amygdala is often described simply as the brain's fear center. This is an oversimplification. It processes emotional salience, the question of whether something in the environment matters and how much. It is activated by fear, yes, but also by joy, surprise, and beauty. It is the organ of relevance, and it modulates memory, attention, and decision-making in response to whatever it decides is important. Fact number 67. The feeling of social rejection activates the same brain regions as physical pain. This is not metaphor. Neuroimaging studies have shown that the experience of being excluded, rejected, or ignored activates the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex, an area also involved in processing the distress component of physical pain. The expression, hurt feelings, is more literally accurate than most people realize. Social pain is, in the brain's processing, a form of pain. Fact number 68. Oxytocin, sometimes called the bonding hormone, is produced in the brain and released during social connection. Physical touch, eye contact, shared laughter, caring interaction, all of these can trigger oxytocin release. It facilitates trust, reduces anxiety, and reinforces social bonds. It is part of the biological basis of attachment, and it is not produced only between romantic partners or parent and child. It is a general response to genuine connection. The brain rewards closeness. Fact number 69. The brain's reward system, centered on dopamine, responds more strongly to the anticipation of reward than to the reward itself. Wanting and liking are processed by different systems. The wanting system, dopamine-driven, is powerful, persistent, and oriented toward the future. The liking system, which processes actual pleasure, is quieter and more brief. This mismatch helps explain why anticipation can feel more intense than the experience that follows, why arrival is sometimes less than the journey. The brain is built, in part, to reach. Fact number 70. Chronic loneliness measurably alters brain function. Prolonged social isolation affects the amygdala, the prefrontal cortex, and the reward circuitry in ways that increase threat sensitivity and reduce the pleasure of social interaction over time, creating a feedback loop that can be difficult to exit. The brain, shaped by evolution to function in social groups, treats extended isolation as a form of danger. The effects are not merely psychological, they are structural and chemical. Fact number 71. Laughter activates multiple brain regions simultaneously, including areas involved in reward, motor control, and social cognition. Genuine laughter is a complex event. It is almost always social, occurring far more frequently in company than alone. It involves the motor cortex producing the physical response, the reward system generating the pleasure, and the social brain interpreting what is funny and why. And it is contagious in a neurological sense. Hearing laughter activates the same premotor regions involved in laughing, priming the listener to join. Fact number 72. The brain processes music in many of the same regions involved in emotion and movement. Music activates motor areas even when you are sitting still, which is part of why it is difficult not to move to a strong rhythm. It activates reward circuitry, triggering dopamine release in moments of musical anticipation and resolution, and it activates memory networks with particular power. Music is processed by the brain not as a single thing, but as an experience that touches many systems at once. Fact number 73. Emotional states are partly constructed, shaped by how the brain interprets the signals coming from the body. The psychologist Lisa Feldman Barrett argues that emotions are not preformed programs that the brain runs, they are predictions. The brain receives arousal signals from the body, elevated heart rate, tension, changes in breathing, and assigns them a meaning based on context. The same physiological state can become fear, excitement, or anticipation depending on what the brain decides is most likely. Emotion is, in part, interpretation. Fact number 74. Gratitude activates the brain's reward circuitry and the medial prefrontal cortex, an area involved in social cognition. When people report genuine feelings of gratitude, neuroimaging shows activation in regions associated with reward, moral cognition, and interpersonal relating. The brain responds to gratitude as it responds to other positive social signals. And there is growing evidence that regularly practicing gratitude, actively attending to it, gradually changes how easily those circuits activate. Fact number 75. The brain is more reactive to negative information than positive, a phenomenon called negativity bias. For evolutionary reasons, threats have historically been more costly to miss than opportunities. The brain evolved to weight negative information more heavily, to respond to it faster, encode it more deeply, and return to it more often. A harsh word stays longer than a kind one. A failure is remembered more vividly than an equivalent success. The bias is real, and knowing it exists is perhaps the first step in not being entirely governed by it. Fact number 76. Or the feeling produced by encountering something vast and difficult to understand has distinctive effects on the brain. Research on awe finds that it quiets the default mode network, the self-referential narrative-generating system, and produces a shift in attention from the self outward. It is associated with increased feelings of connection and reduced focus on personal concerns. Awe, in a neurological sense, is a brief suspension of the small self, and it can be produced not only by grand vistas, but by music, mathematics, or a sentence that lands exactly right. Fact number 77. The brain can experience empathy physically, feeling what others feel through shared neural activation. Watching someone in pain activates pain-processing regions in the observer's brain. Watching someone experience disgust activates disgust circuits, not to the same degree, but genuinely, measurably. We are to some extent permeable to each other at the level of neural processing. This shared activation is one of the mechanisms underlying empathy, and it helps explain why being with someone who is suffering is not a passive experience. Fact number 78. The experience of meaning, of feeling that your life has purpose, is associated with activity in the prefrontal cortex and reward circuitry. Meaning is not simply an abstract philosophical concept. It has a neural signature. People who report higher sense of meaning in their lives show different patterns of brain activity and different physiological responses to stress. Meaning appears to buffer the brain against the harmful effects of adversity. It does not eliminate difficulty, but it changes how the brain processes and recovers from it. Fact number 79. Meditation changes the brain measurably, structurally over time. Long-term meditation practitioners show increased gray matter density in areas associated with attention, introspection, and emotional regulation. The amygdala appears to respond less reactively. The prefrontal cortex shows greater connectivity with limbic structures. These are not small effects. They suggest that the practice of deliberately directing attention, of returning again and again to the present moment, physically reshapes the brain it is practiced in. Fact number 80. The brain is continuously making predictions about other people and is often wrong. Social cognition is the brain's most complex ongoing task. We model other people's intentions, emotions, beliefs, and likely next actions constantly, and our models are built from limited information filtered through our own history. We are often confident in our social predictions, and we are often mistaken. The other person is always more complex than the model. Always. Fact number 81. The brain does not rest during sleep. It enters a different mode of operation. Sleep is not the brain going quiet. It is the brain shifting its agenda. Memory is consolidated. Emotional experiences are processed. Toxins are cleared. The immune system is supported. Growth hormone is released. Sleep is active maintenance, a period the brain has evolved specifically to use, not downtime, work of a different kind. Fact number 82. The brain cycles through different stages of sleep, approximately every 90 minutes throughout the night. Each cycle moves through lighter sleep, into deep slow-wave sleep, and then into REM, rapid eye movement sleep, the stage most associated with vivid dreaming. As the night progresses, the proportion of deep sleep in each cycle decreases and the proportion of REM increases. The brain is doing different things in each of these stages, and both are needed. Fact number 83. During deep sleep, the brain clears waste products through a system called the glymphatic system. The glymphatic system, only described in detail in 2013, uses cerebrospinal fluid to flush out metabolic waste from between brain cells. This process is dramatically more active during sleep than during wakefulness. Among the substances cleared is beta-amyloid, a protein associated with the accumulation that occurs in Alzheimer's disease. Sleep is, among other things, how the brain takes out its own trash. Fact number 84. The brain is nearly as active during REM sleep as it is during wakefulness. If you looked at a brain scan during REM, you might struggle to distinguish it from the same brain awake. Visual cortex, motor cortex, emotional processing regions, all significantly active. What's distinctly different is the prefrontal cortex, which quiets during REM. This may be why dreams feel so real, so vivid, so emotionally charged, and why they so rarely follow ordinary logic. The critic is offline. The rest of the mind runs free. Fact number 85. During REM sleep, the body is temporarily paralyzed. The brainstem sends signals that suppress the motor neurons controlling the muscles. This is protective. It prevents you from physically acting out your dreams. The system is not perfect. In a condition called REM sleep behavior disorder, this paralysis fails, and people do move, sometimes dramatically, during vivid dreaming. Sleep paralysis, on the other end, occurs when the paralysis persists briefly into wakefulness, producing the strange and sometimes frightening experience of being awake but unable to move. Fact number 86. Dreams may help the brain process emotional experiences. Matthew Walker, neuroscientist and sleep researcher, has proposed that REM sleep allows the brain to replay emotional memories in a neurochemical environment stripped of the stress hormones present during the original experience. In this way, the emotional charge of difficult experiences may gradually be reduced through dreaming, not erased, but softened. The sleeping brain may be offering a form of nightly therapy. Fact number 87. The brain consolidates recently learned skills during sleep, even without additional practice. Studies of motor learning have found that people who sleep after learning a new physical task perform significantly better on it the following day, better than those who remained awake for the equivalent time. The improvement happened not during additional practice, but during sleep. The brain continued working after the practice stopped. Offline, quietly, it strengthened what it had been shown. Fact number 88. Newborns spend roughly half their sleep time in REM, far more than adults. Adult humans spend about 20 to 25% of sleep in REM. Newborns spend approximately 50%. REM sleep in early life may play a crucial role in brain development, in the formation and pruning of neural connections, in the building of the architecture that will carry cognition for a lifetime. The developing brain may use dreaming as construction. Fact number 89. The brain's sleep pressure, the biological drive to sleep, builds throughout the day through the accumulation of adenosine. Adenosine is a byproduct of neural activity that accumulates with every waking hour. As it builds, the drive to sleep grows stronger. Sleep clears it. This is the basic rhythm beneath the circadian clock, two separate systems working together to produce the daily cycle of wakefulness and rest. Right now, as you lie still, adenosine is present. Gently, quietly, it is doing its work. Fact number 90. The brain has an internal clock, the suprachiasmatic nucleus, that regulates the 24-hour sleep-wake cycle. This tiny cluster of neurons in the hypothalamus responds to light signals from the eyes, synchronizing the body's biological rhythms to the external cycle of day and night. It regulates not only sleep, but also body temperature, hormone release, and metabolism, all on a roughly 24-hour cycle. When this clock is disrupted through shift work, jet lag, or irregular light exposure, the effects ripple through many body systems. Fact number 91. Some memories are specifically tagged during the day for later consolidation during sleep. The hippocampus appears to mark certain experiences as worth preserving, flagging them for replay during sleep. Emotional significance, novelty, and relevance to ongoing goals all influence what gets tagged. During slow-wave sleep, these flagged experiences are replayed, often multiple times, in a process that gradually transfers them to more stable cortical storage. Your sleeping brain has a list, and it works through it while you rest. Fact number 92. Creative insights frequently occur during or just after sleep. Many significant scientific and artistic breakthroughs have been attributed to dreams or hypnagogic states, the drowsy threshold between waking and sleep. This is not coincidence. During REM, the brain draws associations between distantly related concepts with unusual freedom. The constraints that structure waking thought relax. Connections that wouldn't occur to the waking mind can surface. The resting brain, it turns out, is still solving problems. Fact number 93. Even brief naps improve cognitive performance, particularly memory consolidation and attention. A nap of 20 to 30 minutes, enough to include light sleep without descending into deep sleep, can measurably improve alertness, mood, and performance on tasks requiring sustained attention. The brain does not need the full sleep cycle to begin its restorative work. Small windows of sleep have real value. The body knows this. It reaches for them whenever it can. Fact number 94. The threshold between wakefulness and sleep, the hypnagogic state, is associated with unusual perceptual experiences. As the brain crosses from consciousness into sleep, it sometimes produces vivid images, sounds, or sensations that are not quite dreams, more fleeting, more fragmentary. Faces, colors, a voice saying something just slightly unclear. This state has been deliberately cultivated by artists and thinkers across history who found its loosened associations useful. Salvador Dali reportedly would hold a key in his hand as he drifted off, so the sound of it dropping would wake him at the threshold. Thomas Edison did something similar. Fact number 95. As the body falls asleep, the brain releases a wave of slow electrical oscillations that gradually replace the faster rhythms of waking. Delta waves, the slowest, characterize deep sleep. They are large, synchronized, unhurried. The contrast with waking brain activity is striking. The waking brain is fast and irregular, processing many streams at once. The sleeping brain in its deepest phase is slow and unified like a tide, moving in long sweeps, quiet, regular, unhurried. Like the breath settling. Like the room holding still. Fact number 96. The brain produces its own version of the compound found in certain plants that can produce altered states of consciousness. Dimethyltryptamine, DMT, has been detected in trace amounts in human brain tissue and cerebrospinal fluid. The brain appears to be capable of synthesizing it, though what role it plays in ordinary consciousness remains unclear. Some researchers speculate it may be involved in dreaming or in certain extreme states. It is one of many ways the brain remains, in its depths, genuinely mysterious. Fact number 97. Consciousness, the fact that there is something it is like to be you, remains unexplained by neuroscience. We can map correlates of consciousness. We can identify brain regions involved in attention, wakefulness, self-awareness. But why neural activity gives rise to subjective experience, why signals in a physical organ feel like anything at all, remains the hard problem of consciousness, and it is genuinely unsolved. The brain studies itself and finds, at the center of everything, something it cannot quite see. Fact number 98. The self, the continuous, I that feels like the author of your thoughts, may be constructed after the fact. Research suggests that many decisions are initiated in the brain before conscious awareness of them arises. The sense that you decided, that you, the self, chose, may in some cases be the brain's narrative reconstruction of a process that was already underway. The self may be less the driver than the storyteller, watching events unfold and weaving them always into a coherent account. Fact number 99. The neurons in your brain are older than most of the cells in your body, but the connections between them are continuously new. The cells themselves have been with you since before birth, but synapses, the connections between them, are being formed, strengthened, weakened, and dissolved every day. You are in one sense very old, in another sense you are always being remade. The architecture is ancient. The current configuration, the exact pattern of connections producing this thought, this moment, has never existed before, and will never exist again. Fact number 100. Right now, as you drift towards sleep, your brain is shifting. The fast waves of wakefulness are slowing. The default mode network is quieting. Adenosine is doing its patient work. The neurons that have been firing through this long day, taking in, processing, responding, remembering, are beginning to synchronize into something slower, something deeper. The brain you carry, this extraordinary, improbable 3-pound universe inside your skull, is preparing to do what it does every night. To restore, to consolidate, to dream. You don't need to do anything now. You don't need to hold onto any of this. Let it all go. The brain will take care of the rest. Sleep well. The room is quiet. The night is long and safe. And somewhere inside that extraordinary organ resting inside your skull right now, something ancient and patient is watching over you. Drift on.